Star Wars, it's the saga that defined heroism for generations. Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan, Anakin, these are the heroes who inspired us to believe in good triumphing over evil. But lately something's changed. Andor, The Last Jedi, they're taking Star Wars down a dark, gritty path. Is this what we want? Today I'm diving into why Star Wars should be about hope, moral lessons, and archetypal heroes, not gray anti-heroes or real-world politics. A Star Wars fan called me out on my last short saying Andor's darkness is Star Wars hope. I disagree, and I'm here to break it down. Stick around, hit that like button, and let's spark a debate in the comments. This is for every fan who believes in the Force's light side. Star Wars began as George Lucas' love letter to the hero's journey. Inspired by Joseph Campbell's work, Lucas crafted a story about good versus evil. Luke Skywalker, a farm boy, rises to defeat the Empire. The lore of the Jedi, from the Old Republic's Revan to Obi-Wan, is about choosing the light despite temptation. Revan and the Knights of the Old Republic fell to the dark side but redeemed himself, proving Star Wars is about hope. Lucas drew from history, Vietnam, the Revolutionary War, but Star Wars wasn't a political soapbox. It used those influences to tell a universal story. The Empire's oppression mirrored real-world tyrannies, but the rebels were idealistic heroes, not morally gray vigilantes. Think of Leia's defiance or Han's growth from scoundrel to hero. Even the prequels kept this spirit. Anakin's fall was tragic because he was a hero who lost his way, not an anti-hero who justified evil. The lore of the Jedi Code, there is no emotion, there is peace, taught moral clarity, not ambiguity. Contrast this with today. The Last Jedi gave us a Luke who gave up. Andor shows Cassian killing innocents for the cause. These stories lean into gray versus gray where everyone's flawed. That's not the Star Wars I grew up with. It's not about despair, it's about inspiring us to be better. Let's look at where Star Wars is today. Andor Season 2. Andor Season 2 doubles down on its gritty tone, with real-world traumatic themes that not everybody appreciated. Even The Acolyte leaned into a dark, morally complex Sith origins, where the Jedi were the bad guys. Nobody liked that. The Mando and Grogu movie looks promising with its feature on Baby Yoda's innocence, but even here, Din Djarin's bounty hunter past flirts with moral gray areas. Here's my issue, these stories are entertaining, but they're leaning too hard into real-world parallels. Andor's oppression narrative feels like a commentary on today's politics. Some fans on X even call it Star Wars for the Resistance. That's not what Lucas intended. He used broad strokes, not specific agendas. Imagine an Old Republic trilogy with a Jedi like Bastila Shan fighting for hope against a clear evil like Darth Malak. This is the Star Wars we need. Entertainment that uplifts, not lectures. And the lore supports this. The Jedi-Sith wars were about moral battles, not political manifestos. Let's talk about Luke Skywalker, the heart of Star Wars. In Return of the Jedi, he throws away his lightsaber, refusing to kill Vader. That's the hero's journey, choosing hope over hate. Compare that to Cassian Andor, who shoots an informant in cold blood in Andor's opening. Is that heroism? Here's what that Star Wars fan had to say in response to my short. Next to Toddliness said, Andor was about hope in spite of the darkness. That's always been one of the major themes of Star Wars, which is Hamill's whole point. You know, the guy who played in New Hope? Luke did next to the impossible, and sure, he battled with a lightsaber, but it was ultimately about his will and belief. Andor has the same journey over the series. Cassian goes from just doing a job to survive to actually wanting to help, build something to fight against tyranny and oppression. Lucas based Star Wars on global sociopolitics from medieval times to World War II to Vietnam. Politics, much like reality, isn't all pod races and saber fights. Andor is literally the best piece of Star Wars media to convey that. War is often necessary, especially against oppressors, but it is ugly, brutal, and spirit-crushing. If folks can't handle that, then stay away from a history book. George Lucas was actually trying to say something with these movies about the world we live in. He uses the vehicle of sci-fi fantasy to tell the tale about the greater consequences of political infighting, greed, war, and warfare. Now, I'm using this post as an example because I've seen this on X, I've seen this everywhere with Star Wars fans. They argue Andor's about hope despite darkness, like Luke's journey, and that Star Wars reflects real-world politics, Vietnam, World War II, even today's issues. I respectfully disagree. Yes, Lucas used historical influences, but Star Wars was never about mirroring current politics. It's a timeless myth. Luke's hope wasn't in spite of darkness, it was the light. The lore of the Force emphasizes balance, not gray morality. Cassian's arc, while compelling, justifies evil acts for a cause. That's not Star Wars' heart. The commenter says war is ugly, and Star Wars should reflect that. Sure, war is brutal. Look at the Clone Wars and lore, where Jedi led with honor despite chaos. But Star Wars is escapist entertainment, not a history lesson. We need heroes like Luke, not anti-heroes who blur the line between good and evil. The fandom is debating this on X. Some fans love Andor's nuance, arguing it deep in Star Wars lore. They point to moments like Luthen's speech about sacrifice, but others feel it's too dark. And the lore backs this up. In Legends, heroes like Jaina Solo fought for the light despite loss. Even in the sequels, Rey's journey in The Force Awakens was about hope, not despair. Fans want stories that lift us up, not mirror real-world cynicism. So why does this matter? Star Wars isn't just a movie, it's a cultural touchstone. For 50 years it inspired kids to dream of heroism. I remember watching Luke as a kid wanting to be brave like him. That's the power of archetypal heroes. When Star Wars leans into gray morality or politics, it risks losing that magic. Andor's great for some, but its focus on real-world issues like oppression or sacrifice feels like a lecture. Star Wars should teach morals, courage, hope, redemption, not debate today's politics. The lore proves this. The Jedi's fall in the prequels wasn't about politics. It was about personal choices. Anakin's fear, Obi-Wan's loyalty. These are universal lessons. We don't need stories about necessary evil. We need heroes who show us the best we can be. Society needs this now. In a cynical world, Star Wars can remind us to believe in good. Imagine a new trilogy with a Jedi who rises like Luke, inspiring a new generation. That's the impact we're fighting for.